everyone. Welcome to another episode of 8 Ounces of Inspiration. Today, I have with us a digital music entrepreneur, Vijay Basrur. Vijay is a very special guest because not only is he an entrepreneur that I wanted to feature, but he's also my B School batchmate. One of, I think, one of the very few people I know in my life whose laughter has just stuck with me. His laughter is so infectious. I remember in B school, like if you entered a room and Vijay was there, you just knew that there's going to be joy and you're just going to laugh even if you don't feel up to it. Because when he laughs, he makes everyone laugh. So that's a very, it's one thing about him that has stuck with me all my life. And of course, his full of life attitude, his nature, his optimism. But more importantly, Vijay has been an entrepreneur and he's had corporate experience, so he comes from both sides, and which is why I wanted to get him to talk a lot about his journey back and forth these two domains. He was one of the first few, in fact, the first 5 employees of Quicker. Then he started his own startup, and he moved into the music domain with OKListen, which nearly after a few years went bankrupt, and he went back to the corporate to do what he had to do to continue doing what he wanted to do, and he continued OKListen as a side hustle till he got it back on its feet and he felt it was time to go back into it full time. And now that he's there with OKListen. So that's in a nutshell Vijay Basrur. So welcome Vijay, welcome to the podcast. Hopefully we'll hear a lot of laughter.
Yeah, thanks, Nidhi. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it'll be good. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, so my first question to you is, right, when we start a business, when we start an entrepreneurial stint, we put in a lot of, it's not just our passion, but a lot of our time, resources, a lot of our emotions, right? And a lot of our optimism, hope, our vision is attached to it. And sometimes when things don't go the way we had planned or envisioned because of any reasons, right? It creates a huge, it hurts. It's like a setback that we feel. And what I felt through your journey was, despite that setback, you found a way to continue it by going back to corporate, which is very hard for entrepreneurs to do. It requires, I say, a different level of maturity and wisdom to go back to corporate and find balance or joy there and not be frustrated. But you continued this because you knew that this has potential, or this has something that is so strongly connected to you that you didn't want to shut it or give it up, right? So my first question to you is, how did you match, or how did you blend back into the corporate world? Was it frustrating going back to it and this? And it must have been a lot more hard work to manage two things together now, right? And what was the point when you felt that now it's time for me to again go back to, joining OKListen full time?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's a pretty interesting point of my sort of journey, right? So I think the first point, you made it very clear that yes, there is a lot of optimism, a lot of joy, but I think at the back of my mind, I was very clear that, in fact, it was a joint decision between me and my wife because we were a single income family by then, and when I stopped working, she was all for it, saying, "Okay, give it a shot." But we were clear that okay, let's give this maybe like a couple of years to see where this goes, and if this takes off, then that's great. But otherwise, we may have to relook at this, right? So I think that sort of attitude that I've started OKListen, I was so maybe I had like a 20%, 30% chance that this may not fly, right? So I was open to accept the fact that this could not work out really, right? And I think so. I call that sort of dispassionately being passionate sort of thing, right? You need to have that dispassion because everybody knows that about 95% of the startups anyway fail, right? So when you start something, you have to sort of prepare yourself to the fact that yes, you might fail, right? And so I gave it 2 years. Started in 2012, around early of 2014 is when I thought it was the right time to go and raise capital, right? I did like the whole shebang in terms of trying to talk to a lot of folks to sort of raise capital. But I think the feedback that I got was we were a great product, but we were early into the market, so there was no product market fit really, right? So there was optimism, but then there was pessimism around putting capital. So I was like, okay, this does not look like a good idea. So let's maybe shut it down. So I actually looked at sort of, like mid of, maybe March 2014, April 2014, when I said, okay, maybe let's like shut this down, right? But we got a lot of feedback because we are primarily a platform that, addresses, musicians really, right? So we're not a consumer facing business. We're more a musician facing business.
Yeah.
I spoke to a couple of, our top musicians, and they said, look, dude, you're the only one who's doing something for independent musicians. So don't shut down, just figure out a way to keep it going, right? If you are going to go back for a job. So that kept me thinking that, okay, can I manage this, right? So it was a difficult one because I had never sort of straddled two things at a time, really, right? So this was the first time I was looking at myself. So what I did was, I was very clear that I'm not going to do both things. So I actually looked for like a youngster who could manage most backend. So I sort of trained him. And of course, I trained him once I got a job. So first I started looking out to get a job. Once I got the job, I said, okay, now I have a salary coming in. So let me try and figure out somebody who can, manage the business. So I was fortunate enough to get a youngster who managed it, right? But yes, I think so that part helped in saying I saw sort of validation from the people who were using the beneficiaries of a business, said that you have a good thing going, don't shut it down. So I knew that, okay, maybe I should just sort of, like figure it out, lie low and keep it going really, right? And so I started a corporate job. And yes, I think the first few months were very difficult because, from a very high paced, high action environment, you come to a thing where it's very structured, sort of, there's a corporate hierarchy, there's approvals in place and things like that, really, right? So what helped is because I knew I was going in of my need, I wanted to get a job, right? So I started, I think I became a little thick skinned. So I was like, okay, whatever. If it's going to take almost 2 weeks for getting an approval, it's okay, really, right? But I think slowly and steadily, what I realized is that even within the corporate, if you start showing, elements of sort of internal entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship, really, right? There is a chance that people will start looking at it and say, okay, oh, this is interesting. I didn't think of it that way, right? So what I did was, while I was, not too stressed about the pace and the speed of work, I still started putting, at least in the team that I was working in my immediate boss, I was sort of trying to push the needle on, can we do things faster? Can we do things a little differently, right? And I think that journey helped. But yeah, it was difficult. And I spent like 5 years in corporate, and I really still feel that, the amount I got done in 5 years in corporate, a startup could do it in maybe an year, really, right? But it is what it is, at that scale, at that sort of thing, you really can't, have it both ways, right?
Yeah.
And I think the point that I came back was in the 5 years that I was in corporate, from a one-person team that I hired, I actually ended up hiring 3 people, right? So, and I know the business was going, and I think, but still it was an opportunity cost for me. Like what I was getting as salary, I would never be able to draw from the company from if I was myself, really, right? But I said, okay, there's enough money that I can take to just maybe cover my basic expenses, right? And business was growing. We were seeing growth pretty much on a quarter on quarter. And 2019 was a really good time, in terms of the growth, because we had the internet, music consumption was going up. So, and we had like a lot of musicians coming in to work with us. So I think purely on the business metrics, I thought it was time for me to come back and try and sort of take this to the next level. And so I think that was again a very sort of non-emotional call, because again, I think I was also starting to get too comfortable with the corporate/salary sort of a structure, because sometimes it's very, very comfortable. And but I said, okay, you know what? If I don't do it now, then I'll forever get stuck in a corporate. So then I said, okay, let me just come back. So in 2019 is when I got back, and never looked back since then, really.
Fantastic. Yeah. So I know that you had a collaboration, or there was something with Ghana, right? And OKListen. And what was that about?
So see, one of the things that I came back in 2019 was I said, okay, we're doing well, but we had to take business to a next level, right? So either I had the opportunity to raise capital, or I could look at a strategic investment / acquisition, right? And I think the sense that I got talking to people is that capital is going to be far more difficult.
Yeah.
Also, honestly, I think, having done this for about, like 7, 8 years, I really felt that, I needed to get into a point where there is a massive multiple, of whether I look at an acquisition or an investment, we have to take it to the next level, really, right? So in that context, ever since I came back full time, I actually was most of my time was actively going towards what do we do next. So either I was looking at strategic partners to look at invest, or I was looking at partners from an acquisition perspective, right? So and we went through multiple people. We spoke to like a gaming company. We spoke to a blockchain company. We spoke to GeoSavan. We spoke to Ghana, right? And Ghana that time showed an interest and said, okay, you know what, we are willing to acquire you guys.
Yeah.
Right? And we said, okay, that's great. So we signed a term sheet, but as luck would have had it, Ghana is like a very large. I mean, it's part of internet, which is also part of Bennett and Coleman. So the feedback we got is that, hey, look, this deal will take a lot of time. So why don't you just come and work for us, and we will figure the deal out, right? We said, okay, that's fine. So starting like I think September 2019, we signed the term sheet in August. We joined them in September. Or September, October, really.
Okay.
And we started taking up a job, and unfortunately, March COVID hit, right? And COVID was great for us. I mean, we were very grateful, have been attracted to, like, a lot of musicians approached us. And in fact, 2020 and 2021 were the best years in terms of, business, revenue, profitability, everything, right? But at Ghana, things were very different because they were a company that was dependent on external capital.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of challenges around getting capital from China because there was this whole anti-China sentiment then. So that took a hit. Plus, Spotify launched in late 2019, and they took away a lot of the market share.
Yeah.
So eventually, we actually bailed out of the Ghana transaction, and so then we retained the independence, and we sort of crossed that path in end of 2021 and said, look, I mean, we can't go ahead with this. We had not signed any papers. So then we came back, and then we were on our own again, really, right? And then so that was a sort of transition in terms of like a 2-year period with them.
So, one thing I do realize, your story, my story, there's not a day of boredom in an entrepreneur's life. There's only action. Good action, tough action, bad action.
Action and a lot of rejection.
I think that within the first year, we get so, like you said, thick-skinned that you just smile when you have a door closed at you, I was just telling somebody that this is my third stint, and pivoting myself, in the different domains that I've been. And I said, what really, really, I find very strange. What I find really strange is that every time I start, I feel like I'm 20 years ago because I'm again with this plate that, oh, please give me work. There's no work that comes because you've got the 20 years of experience. So it's always starting from scratch and doing that. So now coming to this, I wanted to ask you that, you said that the mind or the space that you were in when you entered a corporate was that the need is yours. So a lot of things you embraced without any frustration because you knew that this is, something that I've got like a chance to come back and kind of, get myself stabilized. And along with that, I continue to fund what I really love. A lot of people that I see these days in corporates, when we talk about people switching jobs to quit, especially the younger generation or like the term duration, there's no loyalty anymore. People switch. It's because there's a sense of frustration. They always think that there's something better out there, right? And there's not too much of gratitude for what they are getting, whether it's with a pay, whether it's with a designation or whatever. There's always seeking something more. How did you find that space, that sweet space where, and I'm sure it must have been tough, being an entrepreneur, coming to a corporate, again, having a boss, and like you said, you got to wait for approvals, which you feel like I could have just done this and finished my work. All that requires a lot of, again, mind shift change and attitude change. Was it, do you meditate that got you there? Like, how did you get into that space? People take forever.
So one of the things that, I mean, like has helped me over the years is basically I run a lot, right? And I do long distance running, and it is, I mean, I would think of it like some sort of a meditation really, because you're on your own. I don't use music, nothing really, right? But I think, and I always attribute some of my the ability to deal with life, is sort of a correlation to how it is about running, right? I mean, you can't get up and run like a half marathon or a full marathon overnight, right? It's like a long-term game, right? So I think that sort of helped me kept sane to a certain extent. That plus family has been sort of the pivotal reason why I think I survived these downturns. Also, I think, see, when you compare it with younger generation who's trying to look at changing jobs, right? I think what they are looking, there are two ways to look at it, right? I don't think it's fair to expect employees to be grateful, right? Because at the end of the day, the company also has to deliver something tangible of value to the employee, right? But I think so they are obviously looking for something where they feel um, a part of something bigger. They feel that their work is being appreciated, is making a difference. And I think in large corporates that usually is difficult, right? Because you're doing maybe a very tiny part of the whole thing, and eventually you're not really able to put a finger to, okay, what did I do that helped the larger vision or something of that sort, right? It's very difficult. And I think that's where a lot of youngsters thrive in startups, because it's very action oriented, and the work culture is different. People don't have hierarchies. People are like, okay, you did something great, maybe
Yeah,
it's immediate reward, whatever it is, right? So I think that's the younger generation. I mean, it's the vibe of the younger generation coming in as employees, right? And I think corporates have to be very cognizant about that fact, right? Because
yeah,
they really have to change ways in accepting youngsters and giving them the ability to thrive. I think gone are those days where I remember Professor Murthy sort of telling us that, people do MBA to de-risk their career, really, right? Because once you've done your MBA, you expect to be like, okay, I'm here, I've arrived in life,
yeah,
and, I'm just do something very standard, right? But I think that's not how youngsters do it that way. I think they are really sort of wanting to, hit the road running.
yeah,
So I think what helped. So I think there it's just it's a journey for that person to really find a company, whether it's a small or large company. And when I worked at corporates, I've seen, B school graduates or youngsters also thrive in a large company. But it's just that maybe they like the pace. Like they don't like to be sort of, on a treadmill every day. They just like, okay, it's chill. I just like work, no more stress and stuff like that.
yeah,
And to each his own, really, right? That's fine, honestly, because
yeah,
you need a certain temperament to be working in the large corporate. And it's very different from a temperament that you need to be in a startup, right?
yeah,
But for me, I think, like I said, I think it was sort of humility that helped me thrive in the corporate space, because I knew that, okay, you know what? I tried this shit for 2.5 years. I couldn't make it. Damn, I mean, it's like, it's tough.
yeah,
So I think in a sense, I was probably a little bit grateful, right?
yeah,
Because I knew I was, I couldn't sort of cut it for 2.5 years. So I had a different mindset. Okay, you can throw shit at me, I can take it, right?
yeah,
So because I knew that it was the option that I tried did not do really well. So I think that is the element that helped. And honestly, I was very skeptical whether the corporates would, hire like a so-called failed entrepreneur. I mean, if we were to use it that way, right? Because they knew that I was doing my own thing, it didn't work out, I was coming from job. But I think thankfully that I think has fundamentally the needle has shifted really a lot with corporates. I think they really value people who have tried to stick out, do something on their own. As
So,
long as
I'm
you,
going to interrupt you here because that's where my next question is. That,
yeah,
in US, it's known, right? People are very open to, people dropping out of college, trying something of their own, even going back to school when they're 60, 50, whatever it is, or somebody taking a gap year. And it's a very simple trend that nobody penalizes you because you took a break, you started your own, it didn't work out, and you came back to the corporate. You don't start low. They just see you as you are. In fact, sometimes they appreciate those qualities because now they know that you understand every aspect of the business to be able to push harder. I wanted to ask you this: that how is it in India? Is
I
it
think,
hard to get a job back when you've taken a break from the corporate
yeah,
world?
I think it's definitely easier today than it was for me in 2019, right?
Yeah,
Because see, there is a lot of, I mean, see, there is a lot of I think startups are romanticized a lot, right? So every maybe second person wants to try and do a startup or attempt a startup, right? So, and we know the statistics that maybe 95% of those startups really fail, right? So, which obviously means that a lot of those people are either going to attempt another startup or maybe come back to a job, right? So there's a lot of talent pool that is available, which has tried something and has failed, but is willing to come back to a corporate job, right? So I think today the environment is far more open for people because there are far more people doing it. So it'd be foolish for corporates to say no, because you can't look down upon somebody who took a break, gave it 6, 9 months, 2 years, whatever, didn't get a shit, coming back to a job. You should look at it like he or she brings a lot of experience of that 2 years. If it's a relevant field, even better, and then you can sort of hit that person can hit the road running, really, right? And if you say no to these kind of resources, then you have the other option of getting, fresh people whom you have to train and sort of, you have to train them to learn the ropes, right? So I think it's far better now, and people are very sort of open to take, people who started startups. Yeah, of course, it helps whether if you've done something really different, then I think it could become a challenge in terms of finding the right role. Like maybe if you're doing an F&B startup and then you end up, like a digital marketing role sort of a thing, right? For a corporate job, that could be sort of difficult, but you could still fit in if you've done
functional.
If you showcase something around digital marketing in your F&B startup, then that's great, right? So, but I think the opportunities are increasing and corporates are far more flexible to take in people who have done. I think people with failed entrepreneurship stints would still be far more welcome than I think people taking just a break and doing nothing. I mean, I think there are people, because I know there are folks who've just taken a sabbatical and they said, okay, I'm really frustrated. But if you just sat at home and did nothing for 1 year, right? I think that's very difficult to justify when you go back to the market saying, okay, I want a job now. What did you do for the past 1 year? Oh, I did nothing. And that is something I think that's difficult to justify. But if you've done some shit, didn't work out, I think that's far more easier.
And how long did it take you to find your corporate job from the time that you started to look?
I think it took me about 3 months, I think.
That's not bad. So was it networking that helped? That because you were networked and that opened the door for you? Or
honestly, my first job post the startup was with Raymond. And I helped. They were looking to somebody to kickstart their e-commerce business. So I joined them. And I think the role came through, I think, LinkedIn, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't use my personal network didn't help me get that job.
Okay.
Also, I think, to be very honest, I think I was a little unsure. I
So, so now coming to my next point, it's always hard when, like you said, you're a single income household. A lot of times the spouse it's very hard for the spouse to say, yeah, give up this great job that's paying for our travels, a nice, comfortable life, and going into a territory which is completely unknown. You're unsure, and there's a 50-50 chance you'll make it or not. Was it really hard on your wife?
No, I don't think she sees it that way. Because I think, so, I mean, to be honest, while I was a little sort of, on a whim on the business idea, because, I thought there was an opportunity here, let me back it. But I think I had enough money in the bank to know that, okay, I could sail this for 2 years, right? 2.5 years. So from a lifestyle perspective, per se, apart from the travel, anyway, our daughter was very small at that point in time. So we didn't have, apart from the travel bit, I think we didn't really see a very difference in terms of, regular stuff, really. So yeah, I think she's never been somebody who, who gives a lot of importance to some of this stuff. She's like, you do your thing. And if it means, whatever is the whatever is the impact on other stuff, we'll figure it out, right? But I think, and she always credits me the fact that, yeah, you planned it well, and I sort of like my decision to sort of go back to a corporate job was as much as a like a passionate sort of a dispassionate thing, saying this is not working, but also it was a financial thing. Okay, you know what, I can't drive this much passion to the ground and just be bankrupt, really, right? I mean, that's something that, because I've seen a couple of my friends do that. They've just sort of said, okay, no, this is a great idea. This is a great idea. This is a great idea, and they just keep on digging, and then they realize that, oh shit, I mean, I've just run out of all options, even monetarily, and it becomes very difficult.
It wipes out. It becomes very hard then to pick up.
So family was fairly comfortable.
That's awesome. So a few personal questions now to know a very different side of you. So first thing I want to ask you, has your daughter taken over your laughter? Has she inherited that?
Not as much, I think. But yeah, she's getting there, hopefully.
She's getting there. That's awesome. So we're going to have two loud laughter that keeps the house happily, joyous. Now, a few things, whatever comes to your mind first, these are just rapid fire questions to know a little bit more about you. Your favorite color?
Blue.
Favorite food?
Asian.
Favorite city to visit?
That's a tough one, but I think Taiwan.
Taiwan? Wow, so I have to put that on my list now. That's the first that's come. Your favorite word that you find yourself using a lot in your conversation? Could be a curse word also.
That's a tough one.
Well, I heard a word again and again during this podcast, so I can say it.
Yeah, what is it?
Shit.
Huh?
Shit, I think.
Okay. My daughter will be very happy if she hears that, because she really we have been going around.
No, but is there a word that you tend to use a lot in your, conversations?
I think my wife tells me I use this word called sort of a lot. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know whether that, but yeah.
Probably. A quotation that you tend to either look at every day or you love to quote when you're, giving a philosophical, spiel.
So I've only entered my WhatsApp status just once in my life and never changed it, and that's Carpe Diem, seize the day. I think I really believe that.
And I think that's pretty much for every entrepreneur, that's what we go with. One ability or quality that you feel you don't currently have, but you want to adapt or inculcate in yourself?
I think I feel this whole salesman or the ability to actually sell yourself as a brand, sell the product you're making or the idea that you have. I think maybe I would love to work on that and probably have a lot more confidence or the tools needed to be able to convert that, because sometimes I always felt that sometimes it's a little difficult to try and be something that you're not. That's sometimes always when you're trying to be true to yourself and put your own, individuality in whatever you do as an entrepreneur. But sometimes you gotta step up from there and do something that's right for the business and may not be in line with what you think as an individual. But that's very difficult. I think I've not been able to do that very well, and so I think that's something that I would love to do, I guess.
Well, give me a call on that. I think I can give you a full-on help resources. That's what I do.
I'll hit you up for sure.
Yeah. My last question to you: if there is one thing that you want to give as a takeaway to the younger generation who are there where they feel, I want to leave my job and I want to become an entrepreneur. I think you did it beautifully, where you calculated the risk. You said you had your savings there, so it would take you through, and you also had a plan that I'm going to pull the plug if things don't work out, because there is things that I have to do. And it can't be at the cost of just my passion, because there are a lot more people involved, and I have to take care of them. What is an advice you would give to those who are looking to quit their jobs because they feel they have an idea?
See, the first thing obviously is I kept saying that earlier, is that be ready to, at least when you start, be ready to the fact that you will fail, right? Because I know there's a lot of optimism when you start off as an entrepreneur, and that is obviously needed. But
Yeah.
you have to have one thing on your mind, that there is a very high chance that what I'm trying to do will fail, right? And just reminding yourself of that part helps bring some sanity, into the business, really. I mean, into whatever you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And second thing, which has helped me personally, I don't know how many, how does it help other people or whatever, but I actually took up, like I said, I took up running very seriously around the time that I started OKListen, like around 2013, 2014, when I started actively taking up running, right? And I started loving that whole, the discipline or the effort that you put in. I mean, I do running plus a gym, so I have a fairly like a structured, 5-6 day, workout thing, right? And I personally feel that having something of a routine or something of a discipline which you really enjoy and has that sort of dopamine effect on you outside of what you do as your main startup always helps you to keep grounded and deal with a lot of frustration,
Yeah.
that you will definitely have in your
Yeah.
startup, right? I mean, I think there's no startup that has a smooth ride, right?
Yeah.
But I think having something else now, I mean, for me, it was running. It could be fitness, it could be yoga, it could be anything. It could be like knitting for all I
Yeah.
care. Right? I mean, it need not be something it just has to be something that just your ability to actually do something, carving out time, because for me that was also as important as my startup, right? So suppose you love knitting, and if you feel that I have to knit half an hour every day, now whether you do that early morning, afternoon, evening, whatever, but just putting that discipline into it, I think it will pay you back in your sort of entrepreneurial
Yeah.
stint, because
Sure.
that's exactly what you want, right? You want some sort of discipline because when there are bad days, there are good days, but you just need to keep going. And if you're able to do that, something outside of your startup, I think you'll be able to find far more sort of resolve or
Yeah.
confidence at what you do, really.
And I've also
That's what.
realized with me too that that's the time when I'm in that, what should I say, like my happy zone, right? When I'm doing
Yeah,
something other than like my work, is the
yeah,
time
yeah,
when I'm most creative, or right after
yeah,
that. Because a lot of
right,
ideas just flush in because I'm suddenly in this
yeah,
zone of
yeah.
not being in the center of operational mayhem.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, they heard about you need to have your dopamine fix, right?
yeah,
You got to get it from somewhere outside of your work. And
yeah,
if you
yeah. So, tell us any of the musicians that we would know who've launched through OK Listen.
So obviously, so one of the biggest success story that we've had is this band called the Local Train. They are through us. There's a band called When Chai Met Toast, and there's one artist that we are incredibly proud of, who's extremely good. This is a guy called Bipul Chetri. He's from
Mhm.
Kalimpong, India,
Okay.
but he's only Nepalese. He's like an internet sensation. He just finished a global tour in Australia and New Zealand,
Wow.
and he sings only Nepalese, and he's like one of our top 5 revenue earners. So yeah, I mean, I think music, it's a great time. It's a great and a worse time to be a
Yeah.
musician, of course, right? Because there's so much of music happening, this and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's getting tougher to become a full-time musician.
Hmm.
It was probably tougher today than it was maybe like 5 years later. But there are tremendous opportunities, and if you're at it, I think the payback is massive. So yeah.
Wow,
So
fantastic. Well, on that note, thank you so much for your time, Vijay. It was
yeah,
absolutely a pleasure connecting with you and just having this conversation like we are back in B school and just sitting, in the green lawn
yeah.
and talking.
I think it was good because I think some of these conversations have been sort of very relatable, and it's good. I think you brought in a very interesting perspective to some of the experiences that I've had. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank
Totally
you.
pleasure.
And all the
Actually,
best with OK Listen. We
thank
hope
you so
to,
much.
see you fly really high and launch many, many new musicians who have a dream to make it big with their passion. Because I think you're doing
Well,
a great service and you are leveraging the power